Hey everyone, on today's podcast, Chad and I interview Dr. Jaime Schehr. Jaime is a New York City-based expert in integrative medicine and nutrition, and she also holds dual licenses as a naturopath and a registered dietitian. Jaime is also the owner of XFit Lab, which does some incredible work on the VO2 max testing and impedance testing that we have at our Power Monkey camp. Jaime and her husband Isaiah have been a big part of our Power Monkey camps for a long time. Jaime's an incredible part of our Power Monkey community. She's a great resource for the wellness community, and we're really excited to have her as part of our podcast. Enjoy the episode. All right, we are back with another podcast. Jaime is here with us. Jaime, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Unfortunately, we don't get to see you as much as we would like to now that, especially now we're not in New York anymore and we're spread all over the place, but we still talk quite often. We still kind of are on each other's radar with regards to you participating with our camp and everything like that. But we want to kind of give listeners a little bit of an idea of kind of where you come from, background-wise, and why you're such an asset to what we're doing, but also what you're doing in your own specific world. So, can you give a little bit of an idea of, first, with what you do in your world, can you just give our listeners a difference between what integrative medicine is versus conventional medicine?
Yeah, for sure. So integrative medicine spans a lot of things. It's a big definition, but the way that sort of I practice it and in my community is it's really wellness medicine. A lot of conventional medicine is going to the doctor when you don't feel well, or going to the doctor when you're ill, or in response to needing a medicine or needing a vaccine. And my world of medicine is about wellness. It's about preventing those things, preventing needing those things, and or maybe how can we feel better than we already feel even when there's nothing wrong. So a lot of my clients, they're healthy, they're well, they're fit, they work out, they eat good, but they're like, I want to feel better. I want to perform better. I want my skin to look better. I want my stomach to function better. So the easiest way to describe it is really attention to wellness versus illness or reaction to.
So would you say that a lot of it is preventative in a lot of ways, in the same way that we kind of, in the physical fitness world, put such an emphasis on being proactive when it comes to injury, not always reactive when it comes to injury? Would you say that it's similar in terms of your approach of trying to make sure that your approach is not just always reactive once you have an illness going on?
Exactly. The same way that, Power Monkey does it with fitness, really understanding the foundation that makes you stronger and less likely to be injured, or the position or the muscle or the strength that's required to give you the capabilities to continue to excel without getting injured, and therefore not having to respond to injury, right? So in the same exact fashion, it's like I want to help people understand what vitamins they need to take, what tests they need to look at, what foods they need to eat, so that they're not then reacting to being sick, but saying, this is how I learned how to feel my best.
So what's probably the most common issue that you're normally dealing with a client? Is it more dietary needs? Is it another area where you're seeing most of your clients have the most trouble dealing with, or the most kind of continuous struggles?
I can give you 3 areas. So it's food, it's supplement, and it's lifestyle. So in the food world, for me, it's really people who are like, I eat healthy, I eat well, and it's not working. So I eat super clean, I eat lots of vegetables, I eat good proteins, and I'm still bloated, or I still have constipation, or my stomach still doesn't feel good. And they've ruled out all the big and the bad and the ugly, and they've been to the doctor, and there's nothing wrong with them. So they're like, I've got to be eating something that doesn't make me feel well. So that's the most common thing I see from the food side. From the lifestyle side, it's I'm exhausted and I can't, but I lay down to go to sleep at night and I can't fall asleep. I'm tired, but I'm wired. Or I have no energy for my workout in the morning, but when I want to go to sleep at night is probably when I do my best, right? So it's these lifestyle things that people don't know how to fix, and they're problematic in their wellness. They're not necessarily classified as illness. Or they might be saying, I'm not willing to take sleep meds. I want to figure out how to do this for my own body. So that's more of like the most common in the lifestyle. And then in the supplemental world, it's just such a confusing and tumultuous journey to figure out what to take, right? So what's good, what's not good, what ingredients should I avoid? Do I need to take protein? Do I need branched chain amino acids? And sort of the individualized medicine aspect of that. What should they take? What type should they take? What brand? Is it good? Is it safe? Is it healthy? That's the third probably most common thing I see.
All right. So, I mean, there's a lot there, right? There's a lot of, and being able to attack each of those things individually is, I mean, just incredibly complex in and of itself. I'm just looking at it from the lens of my own personal background. Whenever you tell me those things, I'm like, oh yeah, I can't do that. And oh yeah, I really have struggled sleeping, and you know what I mean? So I'm curious, like, what kind of things do you recommend? Say someone is having trouble sleeping. What do you notice as being a huge factor when it comes to something like that? Is it stress levels? Is it, hormone levels kind of being all out of whack? What do you normally recommend when you say someone, comes in and is like, yeah, I have really trouble sleeping. My diet's great. I work out all the time, but my sleep is kind of my biggest area of need.
So it sort of always goes back to the same thing, which for me is the awareness, right? Awareness is a superpower. So people will come in and they'll be like, I can't sleep. And they'll have taken gummies that have melatonin and magnesium, and, they're wondering why it's not working. But it's sort of like if they fixed one aspect of their handstand, but they didn't fix the whole thing, like all the parts have to be in place. So the way that I would look at it is say, well, we have to look at your stress levels, right? Are you taking pre-workout at 3:00 in the afternoon and it's keeping you up at night? Or are you laying down to go to sleep and you can't shut your brain off? It's literally just thought after thought after thought. And that then it triggers a cycle where people are just thinking and thinking, and then they're trying to go to sleep. It might even be something like people who are super sensitive to blue light, right? They're on their screen and they're not realizing that's triggering a wake cycle. So for them, we put blue light glasses on. I think the reason that we can't sleep or have difficulty falling or staying asleep is largely connected to how on we are in the world and how much we do. And I don't think that it's a bad thing, but I think with the forefront, like how quickly we receive our information and how much we're capable of doing, makes it really hard to shut off. Like the idea of meditation, the idea of slowing down, the idea of chewing our food slower, it's really hard for people because they're, they're just doing and doing. I think why a lot of what I do has gained interest in your community, in our community, in Power Monkey, is because that's already a targeted audience of people who are like, I want to feel good. I want to work out well. I don't just, they're not there for PT and injury, treatment. They like, I want to look good. I want to feel good. And it's that sort of core foundation of like, what can I do to be my best?
Yeah, it's so funny that you say learn to chew your food slower. I have a hard time doing that. And I've heard Mike Malloy, the Power Monkey nutritionist, say that many, many, many times to many people. And I find myself all the time just chewing really, really quickly, trying to get it in so I can go back to work. And I do also have trouble shutting my brain down at night. It takes me hours, of laying in bed. What would you recommend to someone, and this is just for my benefit, I know I'm sure that some of the listeners have trouble with it too, but what would you recommend for someone that is in the case of, I have a hard time going to sleep because I just can't shut my brain off? I know that Chris Henshaw as well, we just had this conversation the last trip that we took. He talked about how hard of a time he has shutting his brain off, and he'll go to sleep for 2 or 3 hours and wake up, just feel like he's wide awake because he can't stop thinking about what he's working on. So he just basically has to get up and go to work. So what are some of the first steps that you would take with someone in that situation?
Yeah. Which in some sense is such a blessing to love what we do so much and to be so passionate about it. Right. And I fall victim in the same place where if I don't work really hard at it, I can, ruminate over all of the exciting things that are happening and the checklists of things. But one of my favorite things is GABA, G-A-B-A. It's GABA aminobutyric acid. And I like it because the risk-benefit ratio is low. It's very safe. So people can take like 500 to 750 milligrams of GABA in the evening, either after dinner or before bed. And what it does is it stops that racing mind. It stops like that sort of constant race. And the reason why is because it's called an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So to give you an example, you're driving down the street and all of a sudden a cop pulls you over, right? You immediately feel like you're going to have diarrhea, even though nothing happened to your stomach, right? Like you're still sitting in the same spot. You didn't eat anything different. Like it's this fear, like this incredible influx. And what happens is like serotonin and certain neurotransmitters, they flood the gut. and then the body's response is they have to get rid of it, right? And it's a little bit more complicated than that, but for the purpose of what we're talking about, it's neurotransmitters that work in our brain are made in our gut. And when they're out of whack, that can cause us to be more anxious, more depressed, more stressed, all of those things. Well, GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So one of the things that makes us think and sort of have so many thoughts and be so anxious, even though anxiety is always coined as a bad thing, but anxiety is not always bad, right? It can be positive anxiety. So one of the reasons that that's happening is an increase in neurotransmitters. Well, GABA comes in and inhibits some of those to sort of create a calming effect at night. So I like GABA and theanine together, which is a similar supplement that they're often seen together, just to help people calm down. Now, the cool thing about GABA is it's not a sleep medicine. You could take it at 9 o'clock in the morning if you found yourself just sort of all over the place trying to focus on a million different projects. So it's not a sleep med. It's not something that's going to make you, groggy or delay you in the morning. It's just really an inhibitory neurotransmitter. And a lot of my clients feel great with that. The other thing I'd say to that is if you tried it and it didn't work, like if you tried GABA for 7, 10, 12 nights in a row and you noticed absolutely no difference, well, don't continue it. Right? Like we don't just keep continuing and adding on. We'd say, okay, well, we tried it and it didn't work. I would then challenge you to say, did we try the other things? Did we put blue light glasses on? Did you shut the screen off or your emails 30 minutes before bed? Like you look at all these influential speakers and successful people in business, and there's very strict routines around like shutting off email 30 minutes before bed, shutting off certain things that are stimulating to do exactly what I just said, which is inhibit those really excitatory neurotransmitters.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of what we do with mobility, for example. If you have issues doing, I hate to bring it up, Dave, but a squat, if you have issues doing a squat, then I'm going to really try to pick out what I feel are your 1 or 2 most important areas. We're going to try a drill, and only those 1 or 2 drills, and if they're working, guess what? We're going to keep doing them, and over time, maybe we add another one, but if they don't, then we'll switch it out, because I want to know what's really working and what's not. So there's no sense in trying, adding 5 things to your routine. Let's take it one step at a time. But you mentioned GABA could be used during the day. Would you recommend that also for someone to help them focus on creating content or completing a task through the day as well?
So I would recommend GABA for calming down. So it doesn't have the hyper focus of something like an Adderall. People who they can't complete a task, right? They go to a medication in that sense. Some people will say that the constituent of theanine is better for helping to focus. GABA is more calming. So when we have a million thoughts at night, it's sort of increasing our excitedness. So GABA is sort of inhibitory and calming. People feel that all day long, and that triggers anxiety, and then they can't get stuff done. So for that person, yes, potentially, but I don't know that someone would feel more focused from it. They just might feel calmer, and then they may be more focused.
Okay. So I heard something about pistachios a few days ago that I wanted to ask you about. And supposedly they have more melatonin in them than melatonin supplements. Do you know if there's any truth to that?
I would have to look it up. I'd have to see sort of how much pistachio they're talking about, how many pistachios, and when do you have to eat them? Do you have to eat them right before bed? Because that's also problematic in the digestion process, and you don't want people to get reflux. So it would be interesting if that is true, just because concentrated melatonin in supplemental form in my brain seems like it would be easier to get more of, but I've not read that, so I will return back to you with that one.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm definitely interested in that because I love pistachios. So if I can just eat a handful of those, an hour before I need to go to bed or something like that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think you've been hitting on, Jamie, that I really like is this idea that one size doesn't fit all, right? It's an approach according to the individual needs. And I think, Chad, you talked about that with, an assessment for a squat or anything like that. And it seems like the same thing would cater to, the wellness world as well. You're not going to just say, okay, it's GABA, it's taking X, Y, Z. It's saying we're going to try a few different things and see what really works for you individually. Maybe your gut response is different than someone else. Maybe your hormone response is going to be some different than the person next to you. And people are putting blanket statements out saying this is universally helpful. It's a little bit misleading sometimes.
Yeah, well, Personalized fitness, personalized medicine, individualized medicine or fitness, it's kind of bad for business if you think about it,
Sure.
right? Because it doesn't allow you to sell to the masses. It doesn't allow you to garner tremendous interest without then needing to really focus on each person. Not that I'm saying you can't do that, right? Because there are ways like what you've done with Power Monkey and creating videos and content so people can take it on themselves. But, it's much easier to say, everybody do this, than to say, I don't know, let's sit for an hour and talk about, what makes you tick and what doesn't. Like when I work with clients, the reason it takes so long is because I want to know everything about them. I want to know how they eat, how they sleep. I want to know what stressors they have in their life. I want to know their relationships. And because I just think as humans, we're not all the same, right? We're not one size fits all. We can't all take the same vitamins, do the same workouts. We can't all lift the same weights, and so it's not the best model when you're trying to reach the masses, which is one of the things that I'm doing right now. And one of the more exciting things that I feel excited about is just how do we create an educational platform like this, right? Like being on a podcast that everybody can connect to and feel like, I got something from that. But then they still take it back and they figure it out in their own life. So if someone is listening, they're like, I could try GABA. But I also learned that if it doesn't work for me, it doesn't mean I'm a failure. It just might not be the thing, to stop taking it and then to go to something else, right? And we can do that with food. We can do that with fitness. So I think it's social media is allowing us the opportunity to do that, whereas before, maybe not so much.
Yeah, I think it's really a matter of basics, making sure the basics are covered with each individual. And maybe those basics, some of them are very close to the same for everyone, or some of them might be completely the same for everyone, and then into individualization from there. But I think the big thing that I try to get people to understand, because there is all this talk about individualization and everyone's different, and that's absolutely true. But look, if you're not even accomplishing the basics yet, if you haven't even examined those and make sure that those are at least heading in the right direction, then, why are you doing, for example, in my world, banded squat or chain squats or something like that, So it's definitely interesting. And would you say that that's the same in your area?
Oh, for sure. It's also, there's excitement in new and progression. So people want to try the newer thing. They want to jump to the next level without having solidified the foundation. So I think that's across the board for fitness, for health, for anything, for education, for life. But yeah, also sometimes we don't want to check the boxes, right? Like there's sleep, there's food, there's exercise. I would imagine that most people who are plugged into this podcast feel like they check the exercise box. They might not be so willing to check the stress management box because they don't want to meditate because it's annoying. And that would be, I'm talking about myself right now, right? Like, I know I should meditate, but like I find it irritating because it interrupts my to-do list. And then I'm like, it's a box I need to check, but I'm resistant. We're all resistant in some way. So I think the other piece of this is like going back to that awareness, like, okay, if I really want to achieve that goal, these are the things that I have to do, like it or not.
Yeah. As a CrossFit coach and someone that's on-ramped many athletes into the community through the past 10 years, at some point, I stopped saying anything at all in the beginning about nutrition and sleep and stuff like that, even though I felt bad about that because I know that really those are probably the most important things. But I pushed them aside because my thought was, let's not overwhelm them with these things because people are sensitive to talk about nutrition. Their nutrition is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people. And so I felt like it was like, and I could see in their mind, they're thinking, look, I've made a commitment. I'm in here in the gym. I'm going to come in and I'm going to work out and I'm going to try to develop this routine of being in the gym and working out. So nutrition is a little bit too much for me right now. Worrying about all these other things are a little bit too much for me right now. So my thought was that if I can get them into the gym with the one goal of getting into the gym on a regular basis, and then after a little while of that, maybe then we can start to talk about nutrition and sleep and stuff like that. Is that and here's the thing, I still don't know if that's the best way to do it because I know how important nutrition and sleep are. And really in the end, if they come to me after a couple months and they've not lost any weight, then my answer to them is like, look, it's what you're eating. It's simply what you're eating. You need to change that. So Would you say that that approach is appropriate, or would you try to develop some sort of method and routine as an on-ramp coach to establish sleep and nutrition first?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, I'm sort of biased, right? Like, likely answer is going to be, yeah, they have to establish it. And that's a little bit of my bias. But I also think that we all have a responsibility to self. We all have a responsibility to, whether it's eating healthy, getting enough sleep, exercising, to do the things that are not just good for how we look, but setting up health and longevity and all of those things. So I don't know that somebody needs to change their nutrition right away in order to, gain 10 pounds of muscle and lose 12 pounds of fat or something. I don't know that the goals need to be that specific in the beginning. If they're coming to you saying, man, I just want to get this exercise down, I want this to be a part of my life. But I think that it's an appropriate time to say, hey, listen, if you're going to be working out this hard, you got to make sure you're hydrated. You got to make sure you're fed, right? Like you don't have to necessarily start counting and weighing and measuring your macros, but you got to pay attention to make sure that you're at least feeding your body, because that's huge, or that you're drinking enough water, et cetera. So it goes back to that sort of individualized, everybody's going to be motivated in a different way. Food is interesting because it's cultural, it's social, it's emotional, it's connection, it's childhood. And it's also manipulated tremendously by what we should look like, what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, creating a lot of guilt, frustration, confusion around it. And sometimes just sort of decoding that and helping people feel like what I'm doing right now is enough, or what I'm doing is okay, is a huge win for them, because then they can feel like, all right, well, I'm not failing everywhere.
And it's something that's sustainable too, right? I mean, anything that you recommend, and we talked about a little bit this with Malloy too, the idea of whatever you're prescribing from a nutritional standpoint, it's got to be something that people can actually sustain and keep going, rather than trying to hit a target number or feel like they, did something one time and say, okay, I did it, now I can move on to or back to what I was doing before. So it really has to be something that's sustainable.
The analogy I give to a lot of my clients is it's a pendulum swing, right? And when the pendulum swings from either extreme, we can't stay there. So if you're cutting out all your carbs, or you're eating 200 grams of protein a day because you've got to hit this goal, you're in one side of the pendulum and you can't stay there. And the opposite is true, whether they let go of the entire diet or supplements or fitness, and then they stop going to the gym and they stop caring, and the pendulum has swung to the other side. And where we as humans feel our best is when our pendulum is balanced in the middle. So I just always ask people, like, what are your swings? Are they, what do they look like? Everyone's is a little bit different. Let's define them. And you could argue the same thing for exercise, right? Like, you're there 7 days a week, you're there 0 days. Like, what feels good? And when we can get that pendulum in the middle is inevitably when every human feels best.
So it seems like the pendulum will always be swinging. What you're trying to do is more minimize the range, right? Not have these drastic swings, but try to keep it closer to the middle, but the swings kind of smaller and smaller.
You're an Olympian, so you know that like the 3 months prior to the Olympics was a very different time in your life than maybe the 3 months after, right? Those are two hugely different swings. Like, they have dedicated time. Somebody who's maybe, a games athlete, like their months leading up to the games are very different than their day to day, but how sustainable are both sides of it? And I want people to figure out, and like, not all of us are games athletes or Olympians. Like, we're all humans and we want to feel our best. So for most people, finding out that middle and swinging it less is more successful than like, I'm going to count macros and weigh everything every single day. Like, no, you're not. You're not going to do that for the rest of your life. When people come in, they're like, I'm on keto because I want to lose weight. I'm like, okay,
see how long it lasts.
But it's a pendulum swing, right? And so what can we learn from that we can then incorporate into your everyday, so you actually are able to do this for a very long time?
Jamie, did you fall into working with athletes early on, or was this something that's happened fairly recently? Or when you got into this world specifically, what was your intention in terms of your clientele, and how did it kind of swing? Is it swinging more towards athletes? Where are you on that?
I don't know if I ever told you this story. This is so I was just always an athlete growing up, and then went to Springfield College in Massachusetts, which is very sports-based.
They have a men's gymnastics team too, which is very rare. There's only 15 left in the country.
Dave Tilley went there.
Yep.
So I've always been athletic based, and I knew when I was 14 that I wanted to be a nutritionist, which is just weird because I don't even know if 14-year-olds know what nutrition is. But So I went to Springfield. I was an athlete there. I was a diver. Growing up, I was a gymnast. Just, I mean, if a decent enough, not, professional, but like I've always really loved sports. So I decided that I would be a sports nutritionist. And so I got a graduate assistantship to be the dietitian for the University of Nebraska football team. And it was like the greatest opportunity of a lifetime, right? Like UNL, if you know anything about University of Nebraska, their football team is very serious. Like it's a big deal. The entire city revolves around it. And so to get the chance to literally be the nutritionist for that team was, I mean, at the time it was like, wow, how did I do this? So I moved out to Nebraska. By the way, I'm like born and raised New York. I've never been to the Midwest. I'm in junior year of college, and I pick up and I leave and I go to Nebraska by myself. That was a shell shock, and it had a lot of, needless to say, I'm back in New York. But so I started working for Nebraska, and the more I worked in the nutrition and the sports nutrition field, the more disenchanted I became. I was really struggling. I felt like it was a lot of just Gatorade and creatine, and I really didn't have any autonomy in helping people figure out what makes them feel best. And there was a specific moment where we were weighing football players in, and one of the linemen was very, very overweight for what he needed to be for the game. And it came down hard on me. And it was just a moment where I was like, I have no control over this. I had nothing to do with how much pizza was eaten last night. I'm getting in trouble for this. And I just felt so disconnected. It was a challenging moment for me because I was like, maybe I'm in the wrong profession. And I didn't like sports nutrition. I felt like it was very political. I had a not great experience in a lot of aspects. So I didn't know what to do. I loved athletes, loved nutrition, put the two together, and I wasn't happy. Came back to New York. I started working in clinical nutrition. I was at a hospital in Queens. And again, I was giving 1,200 milligram sodium salt diets to people, and it was filled with crappy food. And I'm literally having an identity crisis. I'm like, man, I love nutrition, but sports nutrition didn't work. And now I'm doing clinical nutrition and this isn't working. And you get to those places in life where you're like, what am I going to do? Right. And I went to lunch with a girlfriend who was like, oh, I just got my acne treated by my naturopath. And I was like, what are you talking about? What's a naturopath? And why did they fix your acne? And I don't know how to do that. And I have, 7 years of schooling in nutrition, and I never learned that. And so that day I went home, Googled what a naturopath was. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to med school. And my parents were like, I guess you're paying for it on your own. And went back to naturopathic school and did that. That's actually where I met my husband. A lot of you know Isaiah from FitLab. Because he was in school at the time to be a chiropractor. And learned integrative medicine. I learned how to treat acne through diet and supplements. I learned how to fix bloating. I learned all of these things that are like how we feel in our day-to-day, right? And it was fascinating because finally I took the nutrition piece of what I loved and I put it with the medicine piece of what I loved, and I found my home. I found my place. All the while, I was very I always stayed with athletes. I always worked with athletes. My friends are athletes, so it just had I guess like a liking for the population. And I went to college, Springfield College, with Jay Leiden. So making a very long story short, anyway, Jay calls me up and he says, I need you to come do some stuff for me. Come to my gym. My clients need you. And he has a nutritionist in his gym, and but he worded it in a Jay fashion to say, like, you'll do stuff other people won't. You'll talk about things that other people won't, right? And just sort of taking the conversation elsewhere. So the way I got into the CrossFit community is actually through working initially with Jay in his gym and then just expanding from there.
That's amazing. I didn't know all those little details. At first, I didn't even know you were a collegiate athlete. That's incredible. Did you have aspirations to potentially go to an Olympic team or anything like that?
I mean, I think every little girl does, right? Like when I was 9, I probably thought I was going to be Shannon Miller or something. But no, I just wanted to, and continues to this day. Like, I just want to move. I love to move. I love to play sports. I love to be athletic. So I never wanted to, I shouldn't say I never wanted to be great, because I think when I was 9, I probably did. But as I got older, I just wanted to be a part of something. And then I went to diving, and it was just fun.
Yeah, diving and gymnastics have a lot of links. A lot of gymnasts go on to be divers later on in their careers. It's funny you mentioned Jay too, because Chad and I both had met each other at the Olympic Training Center over the years. Chad didn't live there, but a lot of weightlifters did. But Jay was the reason why me and Chad actually started doing clinics together too. Jay invited me. up to Milford and Chad up to Milford to do a clinic for him one time, and we were there and we're like, hey, we should do some things together.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have a lot of
Jay's gonna
thanks.
love this podcast.
I know. We got to give Jay a lot of shout outs here. Yeah. Go to CrossFit Milford.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. He's, a lot of our stories, people from Power Monkey kind of track back to Jay in some way. So he's definitely done a lot, and it speaks volumes to him of how interested and eager he was and open he was to really seek out experts in individual fields and bring them to his gym for his community. So incredible what he's done and what he's been able to do. And Jamie, I wonder, that's how you kind of were sucked back into the fitness community and CrossFit specifically, but how did all that lead into XFit Labs and what you guys are doing with that?
Yeah. So initially I was just working with a lot of Jay's athletes on integrative medicine, nutrition stuff, right? So supplements and performance sports, weight, all of that. And I do some functional medicine testing. So I do test cortisol levels in stool and things like that, which is what people had started to get really interested in. And this was the year that Jay took the team to the games where they got second place. So they were doing really well that year. And he came up to me and he was like, I need you to do VO2 max testing. And I was like, Jay, I'm a doctor, but like, I'm not, I don't do everything. And he's like, yeah, but if anyone's going to do it, you're going to do it. Just do it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Right. You know how Jay is like, he's sort of like passionate, but also very persuasive. And like, and I was like, I mean, I'm sure I can, but like, for what? And he's like, I don't know, but I think we need it. And I think we need to do it. And, in true Jay fashion, he's like, let me talk to Isaiah. So, my husband's a chiropractor. He's like, Isaiah, this is what we need to do. And Isaiah was like, okay, let's do it. Let's buy the equipment. And I'm like, okay, and so Isaiah and Jay and I, got together and figured out what this would look like. And Isaiah and I went out, we bought all this equipment, and we spent a couple of months learning how to use it and throwing all of Jay's athletes on the equipment. And this wasn't a business at the time. This was purely just like, we're, a little bit nerdy and a little bit sciencey and a lot interested in sports and athletes. And so we started just putting all Jay's gym members on this equipment. And just one after another and changing the protocols. And it was kind of fun. It was a lot of learning. I had some exercise physiologists join us for it. Some people who had studied exercise science, really just looking at like, how could we manipulate the data? Does it even matter? Is it effective for CrossFit? Because we didn't know any of these questions. And in New York, really, there's 3 places you can go. Hospital for special surgery, Yale, and another place. They were far away. The data interpretation wasn't great. And it's very expensive. So we were like, okay, well, we're going to make this more affordable. We're going to bring this to their gym so they don't have to go somewhere. And then I'm going to give it to Jay because he's going to talk to them about how it affects their exercise. And it was just born that way. And it was really interesting the way that people wanted to do it. They wanted it done. They wanted to know the information. And then Jay said, you got to go to Solace. You got to go meet Dave at Solace. I was like, and, I'm in New York. So Isaiah and I picked up our equipment, brought it out to Solace, tested all of you guys, and then Dave was like, you got to bring this to camp.
Yeah.
And here we are.
All right.
Well, let me say that I'm still not one that wants to do the
I know.
VO2 max test. I've seen it done
Have you
many
still
times.
not done it, Chad?
Power Monkey camp. Well, every time you guys ask for a volunteer, I duck my head and run and go to the bathroom or something like that.
How have I not known that? How have I not known that, Chad? You are the next volunteer. Like,
oh no!
I mean, we literally just got service this year. This past time when we were at camp was the first time.
Weightlifters have no interest in any of that stuff at all.
Well,
it's amazing.
I can't let Service win, so maybe I got to get on there. But as long as Dave, that can be my punishment for losing.
Oh no! I have something else planned for you for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
amazing.
Connection to the athlete world now with XFit Lab, with you working more with Isaiah. How much of your business has switched to working primarily with athletes, or would you say that you're still working with general population quite a bit as well? Is it a mix of the two? And if you had your preference, would you work primarily with athletes?
So I think there's been a really interesting trend in the past 3-5 years, which is so many adults are athletes now because fitness is so popular and because boutique fitness exploded and we're so interested in feeling our best. So, when I have clients who come in and they work out 6 days a week for an hour or 2 a day, not because they're trying to be an athlete, but because that's sort of that's their community. It's their team. It's what makes them feel good. In my head, they are athletes, right? Like that
Sure.
makes them an athlete. And so most of my clientele are people who are into fitness and who are into healthy lifestyles and eating and all of that. And, you know, they're well, but they want to then figure out how to get off their medication, their sleep medication, or they want to figure out how to lose more weight or whatever it is. And that's the people who find me. I call it wellness medicine because it really is people who just, they feel good enough, but they want to feel better. And it's the landscape of the community and fitness and how much it's grown and how big it is right now. I mean, 20 years ago, this was unheard of, but how interested people are in fitness has allowed my practice to still be, if you will, lay people who are athletes. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd rather work with that person than with a professional athlete who has restrictions on things secondary to their team, et cetera, because the person who can come in and sort of own what they're doing is really a very satisfying person to work with. So to answer your question, my community is wellness. It's a lot. I mean, it's probably 80-20 women, just because women go to the doctor more and they're interested more, you know, it's more, a little bit more wellness based, but not all. I definitely have a fair share of men who are like, you know, I want to see my abs or my stomach is bloated or something like that. Mm-hmm.
You think New York City is kind of a hub for this? Would this kind of thing succeed in Lincoln, Nebraska as well? Or is kind of New York unique in the sense that, you know, you have people doing these kind of things at a little bit of a higher level? Bigger cities kind of equate to people looking at fitness in a little bit different way?
I don't think I could have grown my multiple businesses in any other city than New York the way I have in New York. I'm not saying they wouldn't thrive, especially now that a lot of things are moving virtually, but the clientele that I have really came from New York City being a culture of fitness. I mean, boutique classes everywhere. It's where these things are all starting. It's where they're getting popular. You know, if we look at Peloton, for example, like all of the Peloton instructors and the trends of Peloton, like, you know, if a Rebecca Kennedy can come into the office and then she can talk about it, then the people who are in the same class can. So definitely being in New York has helped me grow. But at this point, I think now people are really starting to be virtual and okay with that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do think
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring it back to, you know, you being involved with what we're doing at camp and everything like that. But one of the things that we're expanding into is our retreat side, and excited about bringing you and Isaiah out to Greece with us this summer. And we're going to be offering some of the things that you offer to your regular clients to the people that are attending that camp. And I got to test out a few of those things prior. And can you go over a couple of the things that you had me test and kind of what those are looking for? I'm happy to go over some of the things that were very sketchy on my results. But
yes.
I'd like you to go over a couple of things that you're offering at some of our more expanded events.
Yeah, so one of the things that's really interesting and big in the fitness world is cortisol, right? So cortisol is a stress hormone. Our body releases it in response to stress. And so when we're very stressed, cortisol is released. It's a protective mechanism. We all have it. We all need it. It's also a sleep-wake cycle regulator. So cortisol is highest in the morning when we should be awake and ready, and then it should drop down slowly throughout the day, so that at night it's at its lowest so you can fall asleep. Well, exercise, as amazing as it is a form of stress. So a lot of people who are exercising and also running companies or having full-time jobs or taking care of kids, like they're exercising a lot, increasing their cortisol, and then they're not really finding ways to lower it. They're not meditating, they're not eating right, they're not sleeping enough, or they're exercising at 8 o'clock at night, which is increasing that cortisol, and they're trying to fall asleep at 11 o'clock at night, and it's not happening, right? Now we've got that tired and wired, we've got that racing mind, which is also connected to cortisol. So a big interest in the community is cortisol. Another thing that cortisol is connected to is, for lack of a more appropriate word, belly fat, right? People who are lean and strong and fit, but they just have this like extra bit of weight around their midsection, particularly around their belly button umbilicus area. So that can also be connected to cortisol issues. And for people who are working really hard and exercising and eating well, to have that feels very frustrating. They're like, why isn't this, going away? And so they ask for cortisol testing. So one of the tests that you did, Dave, that a lot of people ask for is it's using saliva, spitting into tubes throughout different times of the day to see where your cortisol levels are. We want to see it highest in the morning. We want to see it lowest in the evening. Well, if that curve is altered, if the cortisol is respiking and now your cortisol at 9 o'clock at night is high, that's a problem. That's affecting your sleep. It's affecting your workout. It's affecting your energy. It's affecting your weight. So we would then come in and use things to manage that. Not including not just meditation or blue light blockers, but it might be something like a supplement that helps lower cortisol at night and or elevate cortisol in the morning in conjunction with all of the lifestyle changes. And I stress that because I think people then just think you can take a pill for it, and you can't. You still need to adjust the lifestyle factors, but the supplement is going to actually help correct that while you're adjusting the factors. So I'll get people who are, tired and wired, can't fall asleep at night, and carry this extra 2 or 3 pounds around their middle. And we work on their cortisol levels, and they're like, man, I feel so much better. I sleep better, and I look better. So that's one of the tests that we did. And that doesn't just do cortisol, but that's what people ask for. We also do a lot of food sensitivities. And this is a super interesting one for me because in the medical world, in the medical community, food sensitivities are not really recognized. So if you go into your doctor tomorrow and you're like, I want to be tested for all my food sensitivities, unless they're a functional medicine doc, they're going to say, we don't do that. That test isn't real. That test isn't valid. We can't reproduce it. And all of those things are true. There's a lot of truth to the fact that there's some nuances with the test that make it not reproducible, and I won't have to get into all that. But what is true is that a lot of people have sensitivities to food, and they eat these foods and they don't feel well. Even though they're not allergic, it doesn't make them feel good. And they want to know that. They want to know which ingredient in their salad is making them not feel good because they love eating salad. So another test that we do is the food sensitivities, which is a blood test, and that helps me understand. And if you're at all interested in learning this further, an allergy is an IgE mediated response, and a sensitivity is an IgG. So anyone who's listening can sort of do a little bit more research there. So we're looking at IgG, which is really just, are you responding? Are you sensitive to foods and you're eating them and they don't make you feel well? And then we're going to take them out for 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months until you feel better. And I've done this with so many people, and they'll take dairy out, but they still have whey and they don't realize that they're sensitive to whey. Or they'll take the tomatoes will be what's bothering them, but they weren't able to figure that out. So food sensitivity is another one that is really popular and influential for a lot of people. So cortisol, food sensitivities, and then I think the most popular right now is stool testing. And I'm talking about this all over the place, and it's just really funny because I basically spend my days talking about poop. And before I had kids, I'd probably be so shy, but like after you have kids, you're like, you just poop everywhere and you don't care. So this is like, it's a functional analysis of your stool. So if you go to get your car serviced, they don't just they look under the hood, they run all the tests, they do everything to sort of figure out like what's going on in there. And the same thing for stool. We don't ever look at, where do we look at how we digest our food, how we digest our proteins, our fats, our carbs? What is the good bacteria balanced out with the bad bacteria? Do we have enough enzymes? People instead, they'll just shovel probiotics, and then they'll shovel digestive enzymes, and then they'll take magnesium to go to the bathroom, and then they feel bloated. And the more they eat throughout the day, the worse their stomach feels. And so a lot of people will come in and we do their stool test. And what that helps me understand is, are you eating too much protein or too little and you're not digesting it? Do you not have enough enzymes to digest the foods you're eating? Maybe there's an imbalance in the bacteria and they're taking a ton of probiotics. It's not making them feel better because they don't actually need the probiotic. What they need is anti-inflammatory support or prebiotics instead of probiotics. So the top 3 things that people look for that we are bringing to some of these retreats is cortisol, food sensitivities, and stool testing.
There's a lot in there. There's a lot in there for sure.
Sorry, I just keep going.
No, absolutely. And can we just touch on the first one, because I think it's a big one, the cortisol portion. Mm-hmm. This was really surprising to me when I got my test back. It looked like kind of like an EKG when you got it back, instead of this decreasing slope starting really high in the morning and then being at its lowest prior to bed. Mine was kind of all over the place, and it was really high spiking at night, and that could be stress related issues or
travel. You travel a lot.
Yeah, that was another thing you brought up, like how much we travel and how much being in different time zones affects the ability to kind of keep those cortisol levels regulated and kind of in order. But I was really surprised when I saw that. And when we were talking about sleep from before, I have nights when I just can't sleep. And for me, being able to kind of recognize that and to be able to kind of start addressing the cortisol levels is giving me at least a path towards being able to, become a little bit more regular with sleep. You talked a little bit about sleep before. Would you say on this like list of important factors, would you say cortisol is kind of one of the top factors in preventing people from getting regular and consistent and appropriate sleep?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we are really stressed. I think we work a lot, we exercise a lot. Our food may not be the best. The world is stressed right now for a whole lot of reasons. And that stress manifests physiologically. And one of the ways is cortisol. So I think we have what a lot of people will recognize the words, and I don't like to use it often, but sort of adrenal fatigue, which is this constant outpouring of stress hormones that eventually the body becomes, almost resistant to in a sense, and makes it really hard to feel best. And so, yeah, I think cortisol is a big issue. If you really look at the literature, what helps us manage our cortisol levels are the things that are so hard to do. They're meditating. They're going to bed earlier. They're, paying attention to time zones. They're optimizing your protein intake. Like, they're tough things to do when you're running companies and you're exercising and you've got kids. And, but like what you're saying, Dave, is that you sort of needed to see this to really identify and recognize that, okay, I've got to work a little harder over here because that's going to allow me to be more productive over there.
Yeah, it just gives you a direction, right? Mm-hmm. You can pinpoint things a little bit better rather than saying, I've tried everything. I work out. I eat as as well as I possibly can. I'm trying to keep my life balanced, but it's still not working out. Why the hell not? Yeah. So at least gives you the ability to check off, okay, I'm trying this. Does it work? Does it not work? Okay, move on to the next thing and see if, this is an area where I can start to focus. So I think that's been incredibly helpful that you've been able to give me, and I know a lot of other people that have attended Power Monkey Camp and other coaches, direction. And you've been able to kind of give them the ability to kind of, like you said, check boxes on what works and what doesn't work. You mentioned adrenal fatigue. I've heard a lot of kind of like conflicting information about adrenal fatigue as to whether or not it's a real thing or not. Can you expand a little bit about, what it is and what your take is on the validity of it?
Yeah, for sure. It's similar to how in fitness, like, we can take the squat to bring it back to sort of the focus here. How many different ways can you argue that the squat should be done correctly, or what the, the right percentage of weight is, or what the right learning curve for it is? And I think anytime we have a concept, there's always going to be opinions on it. And so the adrenals, which are glands that sit above your kidneys, they're stress glands in your body. When the adrenals are diseased, this is something called Addison's disease. It's very, very serious. So conventional medicine, or normal, regular medicine, looks at the adrenal glands as either diseased or not diseased. They don't look at it as, well, what if the adrenal glands are not diseased, but they're not functioning, or they're emitting too much cortisol because of stress? Well, the conventional medical community would say, well, the body's stressed, so the adrenals are giving more cortisol, so that's a response. It's not disease. It's working the way it should, which is true. There really is, in the world of adrenal fatigue, it's a word that's made up to describe symptoms. It's not a diagnosis, which is why people get really confused. Like, is it a real thing? Is it not? Very similar to like how people say leaky gut. Is it a real thing? Is it not? What they are they're a triad or a myriad of symptoms that a lot of people feel that are very real. But because they don't fall into the disease model, they don't get recognized as real. And so then come more integrative or functional medicine approaches that come around and say, hey, we don't need to wait till people are, big, bad, diseased and dying to address these things. We're going to acknowledge that this is actually a problem before it's a problem. And so functional medicine comes out and says, well, we can look at cortisol levels throughout the day. And we can take from that they're higher than they should be, or lower than they should be, or not responding. And we're going to make lifestyle changes based on those things. And that's what happened. And that's how we got to where we are today, which is like, if I tell somebody I think this is adrenal fatigue, I'm not telling them that they then need medications for the rest of their life and they're sick and they're diseased. I'm saying this is your body showing us and telling us that, you're doing too much, you're too stressed. There's symptoms here that are real and related to this elevation in your cortisol. So there's a territory issue in medicine, which is like, evidence-based, and they want to be able to reproduce it. And it's such a an arduous conversation that would bore everybody here, but the essentials of it are adrenal issues are not, besides the diseases, are not issues of like diagnostic medical disease, but they're people saying, I'm feeling these things. They don't feel good, and I want to be able to do something about it. Does that help?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's an interesting place to be. The other role that I wear that a lot of people don't know about is that I'm faculty for Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, and my job is to teach integrative medicine to conventional physicians.
Yeah,
this is something I do a lot.
That was actually another one of my questions. How is it very separated worlds? Is conventional medicine just completely segregated from interventional medicine, or do you guys work together, integrated medicine? Do you guys work together to try to figure out ways to help each other out, or is it kind of like, no, it's just a world that we don't live in? I mean, from your background, you seem well suited to be able to try to merge those worlds.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
They're very separate, unfortunately, and hopefully they won't always be. But I would never negate anybody's work. That's just not who I am. I'm not going to talk bad about anything that anyone's doing. What I'm going to say is that they're educated very differently, right? Mm-hmm. So in conventional medicine, the doctors have zero education in nutrition, maybe one class in an entire, 8 years of residency in school. And in integrative medicine, we believe that food is medicine. We believe that what you eat either makes you better or makes you worse, right? So there's a lot of discrepancies and things there, and there's a lot of territory issues, and it's very confusing. A lot of times what I feel like in humanity is just people think that if you don't do what they do, then what you're doing is wrong. And I just don't think that's true. I think we can all do different things and we can all live together and differences are celebrated, but it's a challenging community. And my job is to bridge that gap in a way that both sides feel that they can work together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me that seems critical. It seems like, go ahead, Chad.
I was just wondering, talk about the differences there. Would you say there's a percentage of conventional doctors that you know of that are working towards merging them as well?
Mm-hmm. A lot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's it's continuous. And, integrative medicine is not just like what I'm talking about, but it's also acupuncture, right? It's the practice of acupuncture or the practice of other modalities, whether it's pain management, meditation, yoga could be considered some form of it. So like we're starting to open those conversations more.
Awesome. I got to say that I'm most terrified of the food sensitivity test. I don't want to know that I'm sensitive to beer, so I probably won't be doing that test. I don't want to have to cut that out. But Jaime, one of the things that I've heard you say just in regards to like social media is that you want to inspire and inform versus influence. Can you tell us a little bit about how you work towards doing that with everything that you have going on?
Yeah, that's probably my biggest passion right now. It's part of why I love what you guys do. It's because you have so much power in the world of social media and people that are connected to you, but you always have information behind it. And I think that's so important and it's so respectful. And so in nutrition, it's really hard. In integrative or functional medicine, it's hard. You can go on Instagram and there's a million influencers who are paid to tell you that they took this supplement and that's, that you should take it too. Right? It's like, I lost all my weight by taking this. You should take it too. And they're making money for that. And it's like, maybe that's true, but where's the information? And so for me, I want people to be inspired to change through information that they learn. I don't want them to be influenced just because somebody who's, pretty and thin or strong and lean puts it on their account and says that they, that's what worked to make them lose their weight. And I think we have so much misinformation out there that people are confused. It's just a really tumultuous time, especially when I see younger people who, that's really scary, sort of the way that they're receiving their information is social media. But yet, is it information or is it influence? So I'm loving the opportunity to do things like podcasts and, seminars, retreats, talking platforms that I can come in and say, listen, adrenal fatigue is a real thing of symptoms. It's not a diagnostic criteria. And for you, what you need to know and what's important there is that you have to pay attention to where you're too stressed and what foods you eat and how we can, use maybe phosphatidylserine to lower that cortisol if it's high. Like it's coming in with a level of information that's important to the conversation. And that's what I hope to bring with all of these different things.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's for me, it's basically the way that I work on social media as well, without even really realizing it. And I loved seeing that you said that, because I've never really heard it spelled out in that way. So I'm going to use it. I'm going to steal that.
All right, go for it.
I'm definitely going to use it moving forward.
Yeah.
So, we talked a little bit about travel, and we've kind of hinted towards the world being worried right now. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, especially in the field that you're in, is what is your take on this whole Corona thing?
Woo, you're opening up a can of worms, Chad. I am not an alarmist. I'm not somebody who operates in in fear. So my thought is going to be a little bit less fearful than what others might be. So I'm prefacing. That's my warning to both of you. I think we don't know a lot. I think we know it's similar to things like the flu. There's more and more coming out. Of course, more people are going to test positive because we're testing them now where we weren't testing them before. And, it's a pandemic and it's growing. And I think the bigger thing is that people are fearful. And I don't think that fear serves us well. I don't think it ever serves us well. I think that what we have to do is we have to be smart, we have to be informed, we have to be knowledgeable, and we have to do what feels right. So I just did a post of this on Instagram. You know what the 3 most important things in preventing illness are? Sleep, exercise, and diet, right? But everybody's out there buying out all the Lysol and, and
toilet
all
paper.
the
What's
immunes
with the
and
toilet
yeah,
paper?
they're going to get stuck in their house for 6 months. And I mean, it's worse. So, I think we lose sight. It's what happens everywhere. It's in everything. We lose sight of the things that keep us grounded and that make us feel good. And we immediately jump into this place of fear. It's that pendulum swing. So now everybody's going to have 75,000 rolls of toilet paper and 27 containers of Lysol, but they're going to stop exercising. They're going to stop going outside. They're going to stop eating healthy foods. And for me, the foundation of an immune function is sleep, exercise, and food. And so, yes, you can take, I love elderberry. I'm a huge fan of elderberry. I think everybody should get some elderberry because we actually have seen it prevents the replication of coronavirus and many other viruses, and it's very safe. So there are things like that. Take some elderberry, wash your hands all the time. Don't shake people's hands, give them an elbow, nudge or whatever you want to call it. But I don't think that we abandon the things that make us operate. I don't think we stop life. Yes, we have to be more precautious. Yes, we should be mindful of symptoms and where we are. But there's such a fear-mongering state right now that I think, in 6 months from now, my practice is going to be booming because everybody's going to use so much hand sanitizer that they've killed all the good bacteria in their gut, and everyone's going to have a stomach ache, and everybody's going to be stressed out. So
yeah, the elderberry thing is interesting, and I think that's something that people can maybe take and run with there. What is your recommendation on where to get that and how much to take?
Actually, on my Instagram, I put the one I like, which is just a syrup from a company called North American Pharmacal. There's a lot out there. When it comes to supplements, this is actually a bridge to an interesting subject. There's so much crap out there. There's so much out there that is just bad. And it's a waste of money. So I always have my clients or in my educational platform say, look for good manufacturing processes. Look for something that says it's third-party tested. Look for something that says that, there's an expiration date on it. It is, done well by a reputable source. I don't send people to the common drugstore to just pick up the cheapest thing on the shelf. I want you to turn it around. I want it to say third party tested or there's something called CMP or GMP, like good manufacturing processes. I want to know what you're taking is a reputable subject. Go online, look at the company. Where are they sourcing it from? Is it organic? And those are the important things, because I could never tell people exactly what to take because we're all in different places. We all have access to different things. And if I say one thing, then that's going to run out and everyone's going to have nothing. So, but if someone says, okay, well, look at this elderberry by Nature's Way and the Sambucol, and I turn it around and there's not a lot of sugar and it has third-party testing, this seems like a good one, right? And so, or, Whole Foods, not that I don't work for them, I should because I promote them so much, but they vet their supplements pretty hard. They do a really good job of saying we will or we won't sell this this company because they put good things in or bad things in. So sometimes I'll send people there. I mean, probably a lot of people listening that live in the Midwest don't have that right near them, right? So that's a little bit more of a New York response. But just check your product out. Make sure that it's somebody's third party testing it. Make sure that it's not just this random person producing this supplement and nobody's making sure what they put in it is really in there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Jamie, I love that. I mean, that's why I always go to you with like anything that I'm about to take and like, does this look okay? Is this something that I should be taking? And I think that's such a good approach. In the same way that you want people to take, eat whole foods and not processed foods, the same should go for your supplement, right? It should be something that is of quality, of third-party tested. It should be in organic as much as possible. All of those things that you would be looking for in your normal diet should go for your supplement as well, essentially, correct?
Yeah. People forget to look at that all the time. They're like, I'm so clean, and then they'll show me their supplements, and I'm like, did you forget that this is a form of a food, right? We got to look here. We got to see what's here. It is important. It's hard though. There's so much out there. It's so confusing. Every day people are like sending me something like, should I take this? I'm like, I've never even heard of this. Like, who is this? What is this? And so if we can all learn to sort of be a little bit more picky about understanding who made it and where it's sourced from and what's in it, then we're taking that into our own hands and being a little bit more responsible with the things that we choose.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Would you say that you have any issues traveling right now, or are you a proponent of kind of continuing daily life in terms of travel as well as normal?
Well, I mean, we all just got halted in travel, right? Because our government just came in and said, actually, nope, you're not going there. So I think we have to be careful. I think we have to be mindful of where we're traveling to. To be honest with you, my greatest fear in traveling right now, and this is just purely selfish.
Being on the subway in New York?
No, it's empty. It's desolate. There's nobody on it. It's fantastic, actually. My fear is that if I did travel somewhere, there'd be a ban on getting back, and I'd be stuck, stuck away from my family for 3 weeks or a month. Right. So it's not even that I would get sick, or it would be that I don't want to get stuck somewhere for a month because, someone comes down and says we can't travel to that place anymore. But no, I'm still going into work, and, the subways are dead. And like, of course I'm, I wear gloves on the subway when I touch things, and I wash my hands, and I don't, hug or greet all of my people with handshakes or hugs as much anymore, taking precautions, but I can't let it stop like my day-to-day life. It's just too, that's so disruptive.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love the fact that, what we've been seeing is that like living as healthy of a lifestyle as possible is kind of a great barrier, being able to get a lot of sleep, working out, and, eating well are all things that have been shown to, be a big limiting risk factor in terms of,
And the gym was like, the gym is like a ghost town. I was in the gym this morning with Isaiah, and both of us were like, wow, like it's amazing. There's no one there, but, which is sad. Sure, I wipe down the equipment 100 times more than I normally would, but nonetheless, I sweat. And what if they say that's true about coronavirus, that it doesn't like sweat and heat? Then I don't know. Maybe we're doing something good by exercising.
Yeah, I had somebody write me this morning. One of our former Power Monkey campers and someone that's coming to the retreat this summer too wrote this morning. They're actually in Italy, and they're stuck, and they're in quarantine over there, and they were like, please come out with home workouts. They're like, there's so many of us that can't get to the gym. We want to work out, and we just want a regular, workout that we can do at home. Like, just put out stuff that we can do without having to go. And it's like, okay, at least people are still taking fitness as a priority, even if they can't actually get to the gym.
I love that. Yeah. And that is the power of social media. That's social media used for good, right? Like,
absolutely.
Yes. I love that.
So, Jamie, we're coming towards the end of our time together. We have a couple questions for you that we want to continue a trend whenever we have someone on. And this first one's an important one, and I think, hopefully, after hearing a little bit of your background, I know we're going to go with the answer here.
You never know.
I never know. Which sport or discipline is better, gymnastics or weightlifting?
Gymnastics.
Yes, easy. See that?
I mean, come on, at least hesitate a little
no.
bit.
Well, her husband Isaiah is also an aspiring gymnast who has pretty amazing handstands. So I was hoping that gymnastics would be the response there.
I don't know. I'm going to ask him when he comes home because he might say weightlifting.
Really?
I kind of think he might. Chad, I'm going to let you know because
Okay, you
know,
let
he's
me know, but
obsessed with, Olympic lifting. So,
well, we might need to have him on the podcast then, so I can up my number. I think I've only got about 2 points at this point. But no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm a fan of gymnastics as well. Just maybe still not quite as much as weightlifting, but perhaps I'm getting there. We want to finish with some other questions as well. And in fact, it's a game that we like to play if you're up for playing a game.
Let's do it. I'm a little nervous.
All right. We're going to do some rapid fire questions. That means that you have no more than a minute to answer. I assume you'll be able to answer before that. We'll do 3. You can pass 1 to Dave if you don't want to answer it, and Dave has to answer.
Okay.
So that's, if you find a good one to maybe jab at him a little bit with, I would appreciate that. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, perfect. If you could trade lives with anyone for a day, who would it be and why?
Michelle Obama. Why? Because I think she's got such an interesting view on what's happening in the world, and her whole motivation is to get kids to eat healthy and exercise. I'm just inspired by what she's doing.
Awesome. So you would just spend that day in her shoes doing the same exact thing that she's already doing?
I think so. Yeah, you gave me a minute, so I'm like, this fast. I'm
yeah,
probably
that was really well done. That was the fastest anyone's ever answered one. So.
Oh, for sure. No, that was great. What is your favorite exercise?
Burpees.
Burpees.
Oh,
no
you are
hesitation.
truly a gymnast. You are such a gymnast. I love that. Chad, that might be your least favorite exercise?
No, actually, I like burpees. Burpees are one of the things that I have the most capacity in, even more than low weight, high repetition weightlifting I can do. I mean, now look, I'm not you, Dave. I can't do 150 burpees in 7 minutes, but I can do maybe 120. So I'm not too bad at burpees. Right. I'm not too afraid of burpees. Jamie, why would you say burpees are your favorite? Is it the gymnastics things or what is it?
I'm sure it has something to do with gymnastics. I mean, just being able to feel like I can move my body that quickly, that fast, it tanks me, but it's also I can recover quickly. Like I just feel good from them. And there's so many varieties. I'm obsessed with gymnastics. So I like donkey kick burpees and handstand. Like they don't bore me really. I guess they don't bore me. Mm-hmm.
Burpees are definitely not boring. Now, running or rowing or something like that, I get very, very bored very quickly, but burpees are not boring for some reason.
Put the podcast on when you're doing those.
Yeah, something. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything I can do to get through that, but do you have a favorite movie quote? It's a tough one.
It's so cliche. I mean, Sarah Jessica Parker in Sex and the City says it's not logic, it's love. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it resonates with me.
The New Yorker in you. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. I like it. Well, I'm bummed that Dave didn't have to answer a question, but we'll finish it out there. Did you have anything that you wanted to leave the listeners with? What do you have coming up that you'd like them to know about?
What do I want to leave them with? I mean, I think just to continue to sort of check in with things like this, the Power Monkey podcast. I mean, I'm sort of on this platform right now where I really want people to have information behind the things that they choose to do. I love the field of wellness. So, check in on my Instagram. I'll always post when I'm on a different podcast or on some new platform or there's some way of educating. I always say I'll never write a book because I just have too many things to talk about. No one will pick it up, right? It's too scattered. But I think, social media is an interesting way to continue to build an informed platform that we can inspire, everyone to be better at.
Well, I, for one, think you should write a book. So maybe think about reconsidering that. I think it would be great. And we certainly appreciate you coming on. It was a pleasure talking to you. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon, probably have you on the podcast again. There's plenty of things that we can cover with you. But for the listeners out there, be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Aldi Chad. Also, we'd love to hear from you guys. You can always leave us a rating or review wherever you're getting your podcast, or contact us with any questions or requests you have for the show by sending an email to podcast@powermonkeyfitness.com. On behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante, and until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.